Okay, so then this response could come as HTML. And you probably know what HTML is. I'm not going to go into that stuff. And your browser knows how to interpret this stuff. And then your browser will render all these images and styles and fonts and other stuff. Now, and then another option, response could come as JSON. So JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, all right? And in a nutshell, it's just a string. So why do we need JSON? So funny thing, couple of months ago, I was shopping for a new fridge. And apparently these days you could buy a fridge that would be ordering food for you. So for example, if you're out of milk, that fridge would place an order with a local like grocery store and then would buy milk for you. Now, again, how this happens, you got a fridge that sends request to a server and then get a response. But fridge is not human. So fridge doesn't need to see this information, doesn't need images and stuff. So then fridge could consume this data as JSON. And again, we're going to talk more about the stuff, and I'm going to show you a couple of examples. Now, this guy, happy user, and actually, I wouldn't be calling this guy a user. So if you want to use a professional term, this would be a client. And then there are two types of clients. So first of all, there is browser for humans, and it's also a client. Or there could be a device like that example with the fridge I just gave you. So that fridge also would be a client. So there are always two sides. There is a client and then there is a server. All right. Now, so we got front end and we got back end. So let's see what technologies can we use to build this kind of app. And now I'm going to flip to my next site, and here I got full stack. All right, so let me say a couple of words about full stack. You probably hear people all the time saying, "Hey, I'm a full stack developer," and you say, "Oh, gee, you're so lucky, you're a full stack developer." All right, so let's talk about full stack. So here on the bottom part, we have AWS. You're probably familiar with that. Some of you are probably familiar with that. It's Amazon Web Services. It's really, really popular hosting. I believe it's #1, not only in the country, but also in the whole world. If you ask me, I'm a fan of DigitalOcean. And you guys, since you live in New York, probably heard about that company. It's like it's #3 hosting provider. Really, really cool. Downtown New York. I've been using them for many, many years. I'm really happy. And this is not some kind of app. I'm just trying to tell you that there are other options. And in my opinion, AWS a little bit overpriced. So for you as startuppers, you should probably shop for other options. So now here we got bunch of platforms. You could use Windows, you could use Azure, you could use Google. I personally use Linux. All right, so Linux is the most popular one. And so this pretty much you should choose a platform for your server, for your host. Now, these days it's like really, really simple because all hosting providers like AWS, they provide all these options. You could choose one with the click of a button, and then you could use whatever you like. Now, this part, back-end programming languages, and I saw that some people actually use Java. Java is kind of cool. So here we have Python, Ruby, PHP. Now, let me say a couple of words about all these languages. And of course, you could say, hey, like it's easy for you because you're a Python developer. So probably you're going to be like, you're going to be saying that Python is the best option. And yes, I'm going to be I'm going to be saying that because I really like Python. And funny thing, like I don't know if you have any Ruby guys here, and please don't be offended by that, but Ruby kind of slowly dying. All right, so Ruby used to be popular a long time ago, and recently I heard that story. That guy just got a job as a Ruby developer, and then that guy was told to to switch to Python because companies switching to Python. Now, PHP, also it's kind of people still use PHP, but again, like I would go with Python. Why? Because Python, versatile programming language. So basically, you could do whatever you like. You could build web apps, you could build games, you could do data science, you could do whatever you like. You could just automate boring stuff. And syntax is simple. And I'm gonna be talking about Django, and the Django is a web framework, and we're gonna talk in details why Django, because there are some other Python frameworks, but I'm a fan of Python. All right. Now, and of course, if you use C sharp, then you're probably going to be talking about like C sharp. But again, Python would be my choice, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, this part. All right. So now we need to choose a database. Now, here you got a bunch of options. I'm really surprised why they didn't include here, and this is not my image. I actually found it somewhere. Why they didn't include Oracle. So although Oracle is really, really popular and many companies still use Oracle, there is one little problem. You have to pay for Oracle. And in my opinion, this is like really, really expensive. So there is another option, PostgreSQL. All right. So PostgreSQL is pretty much same as Oracle, but it's free. All right. So I would go like if it was me, I would go with PostgreSQL. Now, Django, and that's a backend solution that we're going to be talking about today, comes with SQLite, and it's also not here, but it's just a flavor of SQL. Now, don't be surprised with this light at the beginning. Now, as far as I know, the first version of Facebook was running on SQLite, so it's pretty powerful database. And I use either PostgreSQL or I would go with SQLite 3, so it's also really powerful. All right. So now here we got these HTTP protocols, and we're going to talk about REST today, RESTful architecture, and APIs. All right. Now SOAP is also here, but nobody uses SOAP. All right. So I would say like if probably just 1% in the world, and you could Google if you don't trust me, but I'm not going to be talking about SOAP today, definitely. So now this part, this is the front end. So here we got bunch of solutions, but if you take a closer look, they all come to JavaScript. So first of all, obviously we have HTML, right? Because we need to have these bones of web page. Then we got CSS, cascading styling sheets. If you're like really into design and all these colors and stuff, Bootstrap, that's a kind of combination. That's a library that's kind of combination of all this stuff. And then everything else here is just different JavaScript libraries. All right. So now here we got Angular. And if we did this meeting, let's say like 6 years ago, I would be probably talking about Angular, but not today because Angular, it's really complex. It's really bulky. So what I'm going to be doing today, React. So React is the way to go. So to sum up, what we're going to be doing today, what we're going to be talking today, we're going to be talking about React, JavaScript as a front end, and then it's not here, but that's a framework of Python, Django. All right. So Django is your backend, and then React is your front end. Our database is going to be like standard database that comes with the Django. It's going to be SQLite, and we're not going to be doing any deployment. But I already told you that I prefer DigitalOcean, so you could check them. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. That's a full stack development for me. So every project that I start, I would use these technologies. And now I'm going to make my case for these technologies, and I'm going to explain you why you should be using them. Again, you shouldn't be using them, but that would be definitely my choice. All right. Now, let me move to, all right. So before we move to that side, let me start with React. So why React? So a couple of reasons. And I'm sorry I couldn't find that chart for 2020. So here you see that React is like really, really popular. React is like really, really picking up and it's going up there. And people really appreciate the simplicity and the versatility of React. And in the next slide, I'll explain you why. So then we got like bunch of giant companies that actually use React. So Facebook, and I'll tell you why Facebook in a second. Instagram, Twitter, Netflix, Dropbox, and I just picked 5 of them. There are more companies that they actually use React. So why React? So first of all, React was developed by a guy who is a Facebook software engineer. And why? Because at that time there were like a couple of other JavaScript libraries that people use at that time. I don't want to touch them because they're really so outdated and so difficult to use. But anyway, so you have to understand when there is a web app, and let me like briefly get back to this side. So when user sends request, server on the server side, this backend actually compiles a web page. It actually compiles a web page with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and then it sends that page to user. And that's kind of costly because like long time ago, you probably don't remember that time because you young guys, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have Twitter, we didn't have like a bunch of other stuff like Instagram, right? TikTok and all this kind of stuff. Now, and then with the Facebook, with gazillion of users and like billions and billions of pages, it's really, really expensive and it's really, really costly, not only in terms of money, but also in terms of computing power and also in terms of web services to actually compile all these pages and send them to user. So what they decided to do, they decided to develop new library based on JavaScript. And if you're a JavaScript user, you know that JavaScript actually lives here in your browser. So what they decided to do, they decided, how about we're going to send just bare bones and then let users to do all this workload, all right, to manipulate the stuff. So that's why they decided to develop a completely new JavaScript library that would be like do all the magic on a user side because it's cheaper. Again, everything is driven by money, and you see they decided to just like to move that workload to users. All right, so later on in, I believe it was 2005, apparently they came up with a new flavor of React Native. All right, so why is that? In my spare time, I like to watch video blogs about travelers. These crazy guys who would take a bike or a bicycle and they would try to cross like Latin America or Africa and all this kind of stuff. And they usually like show all these adventures. And one thing that I actually noticed, that no matter how remote is a place, is it Africa, is it Asia, it's like Latin America, whatever, like it could be like really, really remote place. Apparently everybody got cell phones. I mean, smartphones. It's not a cell phone anymore, it's a smartphone. So they don't have computers, they have smartphones. And also like these days you could do pretty much anything on your smartphone. You don't need a computer. Like for example, if you're banking or if you're ordering food, like you don't want to like pull out the computer and just do that stuff on the computer because you got your cell phone, right? So, and for example, in Africa, some services that actually was issued as mobile services, and for that, they actually created another flavor of React Native. So why it's called native? And this is where it gets interesting. Now, before, and I remember those times, like I would say like 7 years, even like 6 years ago, people were wondering like, oh, gee, we got a startup and we want to build that app, but we have limited resources. So we don't know, should we start with the desktop version first, or should we do mobile version first? Or if we decide to go with the mobile version like Robinhood, then should we hire people who will be doing Swift and build that iOS app, or should we guide like JavaScript guys? No, JavaScript, Java. I'm sorry, Java guys who would build like version for Android. And again, it's all about money. So apparently, with React Native, you could actually create a code, and that code could be used both for iOS and for Android. And the best part is not just like compiling that code and then somehow converts it to Java or somehow converts it to Swift. No, it actually uses native components from iOS and native components from Android. And that's like kind of cool, because I don't know if you noticed, but if you got Android and if you got iOS platform, the same button would look different. All right, that's different stuff. Another thing why React is so popular, because they use reusable components. So what is a component? Component is a block of reusable code, kind of like a function. As a matter of fact, you could write components as functions, and you just try to split everything to smallest possible function, and then you could reuse it over and over again. So it saves a lot of time. So this whole deal saves a lot of time and money. So if you're like planning your next startup anytime soon, then you should probably take a look at React and React Native, because again, they got the same roots. And if you know how to do React, then you're going to pick up React Native just like that. And that's what I'm about to show you tonight. You're going to have 3 different front end versions. And that's kind of cool, because you don't need to you don't need to hire 3 teams and pay all these people. You could just like work on your project, and then you're gonna be on all platforms. Okay, so that's React. Now, what's the deal with Django? So Django. All right. So again, I couldn't find that graph for all these Django downloads, but believe me, it's like really popular. So why it's popular? Because you see, Python is going up and up and up, and people really appreciate Python for simplicity, versatility. We already talked about that stuff. Now, companies that using Django, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, Dropbox, Eventbrite, and again, then there is NASA and a bunch of other companies. So that these the companies that actually use Django. Why? Why? All right. Some people might say, hey, like, why would you use Django? Because there is also Flask, there is also Pyramid, there is also something else, and they're all running on Python. Now, there is a simple answer to that, because Django is what we call batteries included, because it comes with all options and all the solutions. So what exactly do I mean? So for example, authentication. All right. Now, believe me, when you got small team and when you're a startup, so you don't want to build, or maybe you're just trying to build your own prototype. Like maybe that's the deal with you guys, and you're trying to build a prototype, and you don't want to build authentication from scratch. for two reasons. So first of all, it's going to take enormous amount of time. That's going to take a lot of like time and effort. That's the first thing. Second thing is you're not going to beat those guys who spent like years working on that system and constantly keep working on that stuff. All right. That's one reason. Another reason is, yes, if you use Flask or Pyramid, then you would need to grab third-party solutions, and some of them not cheap. So for example, you could get authenticated through Google. Google is kind of cool, but then they would charge you at the end of the day. And maybe if you're just creating a small prototype just for yourself and for your mom and your pop and a bunch of your friends, then it's going to be okay. But if you're trying to scale it, then it's going to be a problem, believe me, because Google would charge, I don't know like how much, but probably like 5 cents, and that's like sounds like a reasonable amount. But when you want to scale your project, that's going to be a lot. So that's one reason. Then Django comes with other features like, for example, like browser sessions. They would keep all these cookies and all this kind of stuff. And then since it's like really, really popular, then there are many third party solutions. For example, if you want to accept payments, you could easily find an app for that, and you could just like attach that app to Django project just like that, like really, really simple. And in my opinion, Django is not that difficult if you really, really try to understand it. And actually, in my book, I go step by step, and because I've seen many books on Django, and some of them like really, really difficult to understand. So Django is clearly my choice because you could scale it at any time. And even if you got just one or two people on your team and you're trying to build something, you could build a pro-looking project with Django. All right. However, there is one more thing why I would prefer Django, because you could use Django as your backend, and then there are two outcomes. You could send responses as HTML pages. So Django comes with templates, HTML templates, and you could take that old approach and you could generate web pages on your website. I mean, on your server, and then send the whole HTML page to users. Or you could actually use Django REST, and Django REST will send that will actually send this RESTful APIs that we're about to talk about. And then you'll be serving this data as JSON. And that means that later you could actually attach any front end. Again, you could use React, you could use whatever you like, and you could actually build mobiles apps or desktop versions. So again, why go with Django? It's really it includes everything, and it's like really versatile. So you could build pretty much anything with that. All right, so let me flip back for a second. And this is a slide that we actually missed before. So Django is a typical case of MVC. MVC is a really popular structure, architecture, pattern, if you like, how you want to structure your web app. All right. So it stands for Model View Controller. And there are other flavors of MVC. However, I would say that probably 99% of all apps that actually use MVC model. They might call it something else, or there are some other flavors, but that's a way to go. That's what people actually use these days. Now let's take a look here. So here we have a user, and again, I wouldn't be calling that guy user. I would be called this guy a client, because it could be actual like live person, or it could be a device. All right, so it could be a fridge, It could be, I know, like cell phone, a smartphone, or whatever. So that's a client, and that client sends request. All right. So this request comes as a message, and I'll show you different types of messages. And it actually is being sent via HTTP protocol, and it goes to controller. And later in my code, I'll show you like exactly where controller is and how it works. Frankly, if we talk about Django or any other framework, first before it gets to controller, it gets to URL dispatcher. There is a URL dispatcher that takes that URL, and then it calls controller. All right, so it calls some kind of block of code in the controller, and then this controller communicates to a model. So this model, it's a database. All right, so this controller fetches information from a model, and then it could filter this information, it could manipulate this information. So basically here we have, most of the time we have a simple operation, CRUD. Create, read, update, delete. All right, so this is what's going on here. Then it gets this information, and then it sends to view. All right, if you use Django, so this view could be generated on the server side, pretty much what I told you before, and it could be an HTML page. That's one option. Or you could send this data again as JSON, and then this view would be React or any other JavaScript library. All right, so this view is actually will be user interface, and this is how you structure your web app, MVC, model view controller. And when I get to actual code, I'm going to show you that stuff. All right, so okay, HTTP protocol. So let me say a couple of words about this stuff. So you probably know what HTTP is, but if you don't know, you could take a look at any address, any domain name starts with HTTP. So this is pretty much how internet works. So your browser sends messages to a server, and server sends like messages back. So it's no different than WhatsApp, like frankly, and they actually send this information. This is how they communicate. And there are different options how you could send these messages. They actually called methods, or sometimes people call them verbs. And there are actually 8 of them. Here I got just 4. So 2 most important ones is get and post. So let me explain you how get works. So every time you open I know, like some kind of web page, you get information from a server. So pretty much you're reading this information, and it stands for R. So this information coming as a get method. All right, now then maybe again, if we talk about this Facebook, you decide to post something on the Facebook. So then you're like, there is a form, and you're pretty much writing whatever you like. And this information would be sent as a post method. All right. So these two major ones, get and post. And like, frankly, you could just live with these two. However, if you want to make your code clean, and if you want to use RESTful services, then you need to use others. And others would be put or patch for update. So if you want to, let's say, if you're not happy with your post, you could always update your post, and then this update would be sent to a server as a put or patch method. If you're like completely not happy about your post, maybe you wrote something stupid, then you want to just delete this, and then there is a method delete. So RESTful APIs. So that's actually architecture, how you're supposed to structure your code. So in a nutshell, all actions supposed to use right methods. All right, like I told you before that there are two major ones, get and post, and sometimes people get by with just these two. But if you want to use like really RESTful technology, so then you got to use others. So then you would need to use put, and then you would need to use delete and patch. All right, so and each method should correlate to actions. And again, let me give you a simple example. Probably by now you already got the picture, but still. So for example, if I'm on my Facebook page and I decide to write something, so then my post would be sent as a post method. If I want to read your post, or if I want to read like if I want to see your profile, so then we will retrieve this information from a database and we will be using get method. If I want to update my post, I would be using put or patch. And then if I want to delete my post, then I would be using delete method. So that's pretty much it. This is how you should structure your code. All right. So let me stop right here for a second. And I see I got bunch of questions. So let me address those, and then I'll show you actual code and actual use and actual app. Do you need to make separate apps for iOS, Android? All right, so it's a great question. So people asking, do you need to make separate apps for iOS and Android? All right, now that's the answer. So you write just one code. You use React Native and you write just one code. And I'm going to show you this. And then this code being compiled as two different apps. One would be compiled for Android. The other one would be compiled for iOS. All right. And since we got this question, I was saving this for later, but let me show you this. So, all right. So the actual app that I've built is it's pretty much like Yelp, but just for a pizza. I don't like about you guys, but I'm a pizza lover. So I decided that we should have an app to share information about our local places, because I really like New York pizza style, but then I went to Chicago and I tried that deep dish and it was amazing. So I thought, how about we will build this app for pizza places? And I'm going to show you like backend code. And here you see just one code, and here I have iPhone simulator. That's iPhone simulator. And at the same time, I got the same stuff on Android simulator, you see? So that's pretty much what I was telling you. So you could actually write one code. You don't need to hire two teams. And then this code will be compiled. And the best part, forgive me if I sound like a broker record, will be using native components. All right. So that's kind of cool part. I hope I answered that question. I haven't any burger with Python meat in. Yeah, joke. Good one. You never had a full stack. Okay. Slow. All right. So people saying, all right. So I thought Python is one of the slowest programming languages in terms of performance. Haha. That was a quick answer. All right. So let me say a couple of things. All right. So yeah. So comparing to C, Python might be slower. Python might be slower, but it depends what you're trying to do. So for example, if you're trying to build some kind of app or maybe like infrastructure for nuclear, I know what they call them, factory, whatever. So then probably you would do it in C. But if you're trying to build a prototype, so for example, you got this killer idea for your app and you hope to raise some money, and there is just one or two guys on your team, or maybe like you limited in your resources, you don't have that much time to waste and to write all this code, all these lines in C++ or C#, because it's really annoying. Then you would go with Python, all right? And believe me, you won't feel that difference in performance, like really. So that's one thing. Another thing is these days there are a bunch of different compiles for Python that would compile your code and they would make your code faster. So for example, there is library pandas. It's mostly used for data science and data analytics. But anyway, so it was developed for Wall Street guys, and Wall Street guys, they need to react like, they need to be like really, really fast. So there are different engines in pandas, for example, that would compile your code and they would make Python really, really as fast as C++. You see, so there are options how you could make Python run faster. All right, but again, it would be much easier to write this code if you're a web developer and you need to raise money. And again, like all these companies like Instagram and Facebook and others, they use Python for their apps. So I guess it's fast enough for them. All right. Okay.
So Art, I'm just going to read you the next question to save some time. It is,
Okay.
what are the advantages of Django versus Node.js?
All right. First of all, there is a huge difference for me because I don't use Node.js. That was a short answer. All right. Now, in my opinion, Django is more versatile. It comes with more features. When you use Node.js, pretty much for everything, you would need to use a third-party solution. All right. So again, it all comes to authentication, authorization, some other stuff, all these open channels. So Django is more versatile. It's you could scale it. You could scale this project using Django. And as far as I know, that's the most advanced framework right now. So all big companies, they would go with Django because no matter, and again, that's advantage of Django. No matter if you just like starting with some kind of small project or you're planning to hit a market with like a Spotify, you could use a Django. And again, with Django, you could use different options for front end. All right. So you could use whatever you like. So that would be my answer. Okay, SciPython. Okay, so we don't. My favorite pizza. Oh no, and I can answer that question simply because I like so many different pizzas. Again, like in Chicago, it's one. In New York, it's, and here, because I'm currently in New Jersey, and here we got like really cool pizza place. So if you ever in New Jersey, let me know. I'll show you one. All right, and it's like really, really good. So now let me get to my code. We don't have much time left. So okay, so what I'm gonna do, guys, so I'm gonna send you a link to this code in our chat room. So this code is for Django. All right, and also this is my GitHub. If you go here, you could just like look for a program with us. So here I got three options. So one is for Django, one is for mobile app. That's pretty much what you see here. So if you want to build something like this, so that would be the code. So React Native, and this one is for another version. So this is a desktop. Oops. This is a desktop version. All right. So let me start with the code for Django. You can find it here, and I just sent it to you. So that's a pizza project. And so let me explain you what's going on here. So first of all, when your browser sends a request, it goes to URL, to URLs. That's a URL dispatcher. And here you got a bunch of patterns and you're trying to identify what user is trying to do. So for example, here, if user wants to delete the record, so that's going to be delete. I'm sorry, here, delete. If you're trying to fetch details for a particular pizza place, then pizzeria detail, and that's going to be, you see, retrieve API view. All right, and then create if you want to create one, and then this from URL dispatcher, it actually goes to views, and these views, if you remember here, views would be a controller. So views would be a controller, and so here you see I got all these views, that actual code, and as you can see, it's like really simple. So for example, if you want to create a new place, so if you want to add new pizza place, so then this code will be called, this class would be invoked, create API. All right, and I'll show you like how it actually looks like in a second. So if you want to update, so then you got this retrieve update view, and this block of code will be responsible for actually updating database. And if you want to delete, so that actually they call destroy this stuff. And here I got pretty much the same. So if you want to like get a user, if you want to register a new user, so this code would be called. All right, so that's this part. Here, then from here it goes to models. And that's not actual database, but this is schema. And I hope you're familiar with the database. So here you see I'm placing my schema, and I decided to call it pizzeria. And what are the attributes? We got to have like pizzeria name, street, city, and so on, maybe description, logo image, all right? And then I'm creating a relation. I got another database. I got another table in my database for images. So for example, you're at pizza place and you're really impressed, and you're just taking pictures and you want to add more pictures of that place. So that's actually would be a model. And again, we're talking about MVC model view controller. So what about view? So if you go to this website, so this is actually projects being live, and this is actually right now it's on the server. So I'm going to send you this link. So this backend on the server is actually serving this JSON. You see, it actually comes as JSON. And right now in my database, I have 4 records, all these pizza places from different places. And by the way, the actual ones, it's not some kind of dummy data. I tried all this pizza at all these pizza places. So you see they're serving this data. So now, and for example, you could see that these pretty much images from my database. And the point I'm trying to make is that now we could use this JSON pretty much with any front end. So again, could be React, or it could be something else. It could be jQuery, it could be Mustache, it could be Vue, or it could be something else. And this is a list view. And also here, for example, if we go by ID, so now you see I'm fetching details for this pizza, Bravo Pizza. It's by our office in New York. So we're fetching this information. And here you got a bunch of images. And that's actually working. You could see it. You could see it right now if you open that link. So now what can we do with this information? So for starters, we could have a desktop version. And forgive me because it's really simple, because my goal here was to just build the bare bones for this app. And right now it started, and it's actually running on my local server. It's fetching all these records from that database, and actually what it does, it consuming those APIs. All right. So now again, why React? Because you see, you don't need to reload that page. You don't need to reload the page. If I want to see details for this pizza place, I could just click on it and you see all details here. Oh, I want to see details about this pizza place. So see, I'm not reloading the page. I'm still using the same HTML structure. And you see, my browser is doing all the work. All right. So pretty much every time I'm clicking here, so what's going on there? So then it sends another request to a server, and then it fetches that API, and again, it's just consuming that, and they're just consuming that string. And that's pretty much it. All right. You see, it's like really simple. And you could add more pizza places, or you could, you see, update or delete pizza place. So that would be a desktop version. And based on that, I got these two. So you see, that's pretty much iOS version. And if you click on this, here you'll see all these details for this pizza place, right? And again, that stuff's coming from that URL that I just showed you, pizza versus pizza, all right? So that's pretty much where it's coming from. And here we have this Android version. So it's pretty much the same. So you see, again, my point is you could create one backend and then you could do whatever you like with it. All right. So if you don't like these devices, then you could have a fridge, and fridge could consume these JSON APIs, and then that fridge could order milk or whatever you like. You see. All right. So that's pretty much it for today. That's all the stuff that I wanted to show you. I hope I made the case for Django and React. And if later you have more questions, you could ask me at on Twitter or Instagram. Now, also at Practical Programming, twice a month we do a bunch of free classes. We actually do classes for React, for Django, for Python, for other stuff, for web design. And on my Twitter and my Instagram, I usually announce them. So if you like to know when we will have next event, so you could just follow me. And in this book that right now is available for pre-order, and it will be hidden stores, I believe, like in a week or so. So I actually go in details how to build that stuff. All right, so let me stop right here and let me answer questions. Artichoke in Williamsburg, I think there are probably a couple of them. So the one that I mentioned was in downtown New York. Where does it says system 86? I'm not sure. Matthew, I'm not sure what exactly do you mean. What is the name of Android emulator? All right, so Android emulator is actually running on Android Studio. So you download Android Studio, and you would actually use Android Studio if you want to build this Android app. However, I don't use Android Studio. I just use just one function, which is emulator. So, and that's what I use for Android. All right. So any other questions? Any other questions, guys?
I just have one more question before we end off this presentation. I was wondering if you would go back to the emulators, it seems that like all the images loaded for the pizzerias except for the last one. Is that like a problem with the React system, or is that like?
All right. Yeah. So no. All right. So let's check. I think the problem is with my simulator. I know, because frankly, before this presentation, I had problems with launching this simulator is, I think something went wrong. I maybe like I don't have much memory right now because there is so much stuff running on my computer, and I think that might be a problem. So I don't think that that's a problem of backend, but we could check. Just give me a second. We could check. So if we go here and if we go here, so Pisanas, and you see, oh no, apparently something went wrong. Apparently I lost that image. All right. So yeah. So basically it's not in the database for some reason, and I don't know why, but I'm gonna check it later. But yeah, I had sometimes they acting kind of up. All right. So sometimes they acting kind of up, and sometimes when you're working on a project, you would need to like reboot them a couple of times.
All right.
All right.
So thank you so much, Art. We don't seem to have any more questions. We really appreciate your time. I think your presentation was extremely detailed. So why don't we just give a round of applause to Art for giving
All
us a
right.
great React
Thank you, guys.
presentation.
Thank you, guys. And again, if you have any questions down the road, so send me a question. I usually get back to people, maybe not right away, but like definitely in a day or two. If you have questions, I'll be, you're more than welcome to send me your questions. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Bye.
Yep.